I'm really going to be only giving you a very quick outline of this human rights paper now, because it's obviously still a work in progress. So I just want to outline what the components of it are going to be and how they might fit, or how they do fit, with the work that we've all undertaken so far. And obviously we have just a few minutes, Holly and I, so if you want more detail, it's probably best to ask me afterwards, but it's just a kind of taster, really. I want to first of all thank the authors and contributors to date on this paper, and these are they. I think it's important to pay attention to this resolution from the UN Human Rights Council that recognises that preventable maternal mortality and morbidity is a health development and human rights challenge. Now, the reason I've highlighted the morbidity element of this is because I think that also plays into our current debates around overuse of intervention. So this for me, this resolution crosses over both of those paradigms, this balancing act that this midwifery series is aiming to construct and deliver on. And one of the things that this resolution requires in order to achieve effective maternal rights is the protection and promotion of the basic human rights of women and girls. So this isn't just about the human rights at the point of contact with the maternity services, but this is a general approach actually that Wim was referring to, that if you want to deliver on effective maternity and midwifery care, you have to have effective human rights, and vice versa is reciprocal. If you have good midwifery care, you're more likely to be generating effective human rights, and I might say a little bit more about that in just a couple of slides' time. So the rights that are outlined in this particular document, and there are of course a number of different takes on what human rights are the right to life, dignity. Now again, those two things cut across this balance that we're trying to achieve within the midwifery series. Education, information, interestingly scientific progress, freedom from discrimination, and the highest attainable standard of health. And what we're going to do, and are doing currently and have done some work on already, is linking up at the macro, meso and micro levels these human rights with the framework that you've already seen, the framework that's developed out of this series, to see how and where we can connect up the delivery of the framework against human rights as they appear. And these human rights have to be taken into account alongside obligations. And I've actually put this picture up. This is Geraldine, who's a refugee, asylum seeker refugee, who was in the UK a few years ago and who had an incredibly torrid time dealing with the asylum system when she was pregnant and being moved around the country very soon after a caesarean section, because there was this policy of moving asylum seekers continuously and breaking up as a consequence the communities that they were forming, for example church communities, and it had a very profound effect on her, and was, in my, as far as I can see, it was an abrogation of the human rights obligations that we have towards women in this circumstance. So human rights are indivisible. That's to say, you can't pick up one or another and say this one's better than that one. You have to have that whole spectrum of human rights to be able to be delivering a system which we should be. Accountability is fundamental, and that's at all levels of the system. So this isn't just about governments to sort out what's going on in their country, to make sure that women are educated, for example, or to make sure that there's access to clean water, or to make sure there's access to housing or employment, or freedom from aggression and violence. It's actually the accountability of each service provider as they provide their service, and of each systems person who's setting up health systems to make sure that these human rights are embedded at every level of the process. Non-discrimination is clearly vital in this circumstance, and that's not only non-discrimination around migrants, which is where this commonly tends to be looked at, but within subgroups, teenagers, for example, who are often young women who are often discriminated against in the maternity services. Participation, so what we've been talking about in this series, which is coming at this from the point of view of giving a voice to women, so women and families and their partners, to say what they need and want, and then acting upon that, as we're doing in this series. So what Petra has said, or what the team has said in the final paper, is investing in midwifery is a solution. And I use that word advisedly because we will be launching a campaign around this notion of solution, which you've been looking at is part of, to deliver on women's rights to sexual and reproductive health. And what we're doing in the paper is we're looking at the data that's arising from various databases around women's literacy, around voice and accountability and around the rule of law, and mapping that by country against the provision of skilled care providers, specifically midwives, against cesarean section rates, and against mortality and morbidity. We would very much like to also map it against respectful care, but unfortunately we have very few measures for respectful care these days. So one of the things I think that will be coming out of the research agenda is there's a big gap around this notion of positive outcomes that we're not currently mapping and paying attention to, and they're going to be really important in our human rights work or our human rights paper, as well as in the general examination of midwifery. Thank you.